I almost feel like I'm like thinking of like someone who's passed away. I feel like I've grieved the loss of who I was before. I think about her the way I think about like other family members that I've lost in the past because it just seems so distant and so far away. My name is Uroosa. I live in Dallas, Texas, and I was diagnosed with stage 4 stomach cancer in September of 2020. If I've learned anything, it's that nothing is promised, but also everything happens for a reason. So it's really just kind of like been taking everything as it comes and understanding that even if I don't know like why this is happening or the wisdom behind it, that this is where I'm supposed to be. In college, when I was about 21 years old, I started experiencing stomach issues, and that kind of looked like a lot of like nausea, and just like feeling full after eating like very little. And there was a summer where I remember like I lost maybe 20 pounds without trying, and and I was experiencing nausea. I knew something was wrong. I went to my doctor, and they told me that it was just like stress related, and just to kind of like be able to manage my stress, and told me to take ibuprofen. And that happened for like 4 months. Yeah, I just kept going back. And honestly, it just felt like they were treating me like I was just like a junkie college student. Like I feel like they thought that I was like fishing for pain meds or something, because that's literally what they treated me like. And at this point I've gone to like the university doctor, I've been to like my PCP, like I've been to the ER. They're all saying the same thing. So like fast forward a little bit, one day I wake up in the hospital and realize that I had lost consciousness at work. I'd passed out. And I'm talking to this doctor, and he's telling me like, yeah, you passed out because you lost a lot of blood. You lost a lot of blood because you were internally bleeding. You were internally bleeding because you had an untreated stomach ulcer. And it's been untreated for so long that it led to a perforation in your stomach lining, causing the internal bleeding. And I was like, that's great. I was like, I've been coming to the doctor for like 4 months, telling you guys something's wrong, and you've been telling me that it's nothing. I had to take ibuprofen, and the ibuprofen was like making it worse. Anyways, that happened, and that was like my gateway stomach issue. And at that point, they had also tested me for H. pylori. I did test positive. And so I did the treatment course for that. I believe I did 2 courses. And that was kind of it with the H. pylori. Like it was never really brought up again. It was never tested again. So 2019, this is like fall 2019. I think my first initial symptom was like this really like just onset of extreme fatigue. And for me, it's like, I would like to think that I'm pretty like in tune with my body. I know, I know what tired feels like. I know what like, I know what exhausted feels like. I know what, being fatigued feels like. So for me, like I knew that whatever I was feeling was way beyond the threshold of anything that I'd ever felt, right? So for me, I'm like, I've literally never been this tired before. Like when I'm telling you, like, I don't have the energy to do anything, like I don't. Yeah, so that was like my first obvious symptom. I was also at the same time, I was experiencing a lot of like gastrointestinal type symptoms where there was nausea. I was experiencing heartburn. I was experiencing a lot of fullness, feeling a feeling of fullness after eating just like one or two bites. And one of the symptoms that was like very consistent throughout this entire time was this feeling. I remember like I would feel a pain in my like stomach and abdomen area at all times, whether it was like sharp or dull. It would kind of like vary, but it was always there. And it was always, I remember it was sharper and like more painful when I would be laying down. I just remember like going to sleep and things like that was like very difficult for me. Um, but yes, so when that started happening, I took my over-the-counter medication thinking that this is going to help. It didn't. I went to go see my gastroenterologist, and he set up an endoscopy. He did a biopsy with it, and he told me that, like this is just a really nasty ulcer, that, it's going to take some time to kind of heal up. So like that's probably why I'd been experiencing so many symptoms for so long. And he gave me, like, we're like, all right, we're going to take this medication, let it run its course, and then take it from there. So I did that. And at this point, like a few weeks have passed, a few months have passed. And this just continued to happen for the next few months. So between December 2019 and September of 2020, when I received my diagnosis, by then I had had three endoscopies, and a colonoscopy, all with biopsies. All of them that came back normal, biopsies were normal. I had been to the ER multiple times, had countless like blood work done, multiple CT scans done, and everything was just it's normal. Like they're like, you're fine, you're fine, you're like it's just stress related. Like I don't know. Obviously, as a patient, like it was very, very frustrating for me. And because I had experienced something similar years before, of like constantly being dismissed and being told that this was stress related, and then like having to end up in the hospital and kind of being like, I told you so. I don't know. I just like, I felt like I was back in that headspace. So I believe it was my third endoscopy that showed where the biopsies came back, and showed signs of cancer. I remember as soon as I got the diagnosis, I was just like, okay, like what's next, right? Like at this point, I'm just grateful to have an answer. And I know what's wrong. So now we can, you know, now that we know what's wrong, we can figure it out. And at that point, like immediately he was like, all right, we need to get scans done, blood work, had all that stuff done the same day. And after that, he was like, like we're gonna let like it seems like we're gonna need to do surgery. So over like the next few weeks, I got opinions from multiple oncologists. I probably got about three opinions, just because everybody that I was like meeting, all the doctors that I was seeing, they were like, wow, like stomach cancer is so rare in somebody your age. Like I've never seen it in somebody this young. I ended up choosing to do the Whipple procedure because I just remember having like this very like overwhelming sense of calmness with that doctor, and feel like it was with all of the other doctors I met, that was the only time where I'm sitting across from someone feeling like, okay, like he's genuine, like he's gonna do whatever it takes to save me. And I just felt this sense of like he's gonna do his best. I don't know. And while I knew it was the more aggressive option, I just felt like that's what I had to do. I wake up from my surgery, and yeah, my doctor's in my room. He's the only other person in there with me. And I remember like the only thing I remember, or like the first thing I remember after waking up from surgery is him telling me that he was like, "Hey, we got your tumor. We got clean margins. That's the good news." And I was like, "Okay, when you say it like that, like what's the bad news, right?" Uh, or he's like, "It's not bad," but he's like, "It wasn't duodenal cancer. Like what we thought was duodenal cancer was actually gastric cancer that had metastasized to your duodenum and your pancreas." And I was like, "Yo, that's kind of crazy." I was like, how did y'all miss that? Right? So it's like what they thought to be a 4 centimeter tumor in my duodenum ended up being like almost 11 centimeter tumor that covered a big chunk of my stomach, pancreas, and duodenum. Yeah, so they removed 80% of my stomach, 30% of my pancreas, my duodenum, my gallbladder, and my bile duct. They resected a lot of lymph nodes. I can't remember the exact amount, but there was a good amount of them that came back positive for malignancy. And so that was kind of all of a sudden it's like, okay, like we're dealing with kind of like a different beast here, right? They presented me with the choice and they're like, we could do IVF and you can wait until that's done and then we can start chemo, or you can start chemo now. We recommend that you start chemo now. And I was like, okay, well, that's what you recommend. Like, that's what we ended up doing. Um, Started chemo, and my doctor's kind of like reading me off all of the potential side effects that can come with this chemo. And like to the T, I experienced every single one. I was like, wow, there wasn't a single thing on there that I missed, right? Chemo was very, very, very difficult for me. I remember when I received my initial diagnosis, I remember like thinking that the surgery was going to be the hardest part. I was like, wow, like they're removing like an insane amount of like my body, like my organs. Like that's terrifying, right? That's where a lot of like my anxiety was. But looking back, like chemo was definitely the hardest part of the entire like cancer like journey. I remember my oncologist, like before I started chemo, like asking him like, okay, like can you describe it to me? Like what should I expect? And he was like, I'm not gonna lie, like I'm not gonna sugarcoat it for you. Like it's hard. It's gonna be the hardest thing like that you've probably ever faced in your life. And it's gonna suck and you're gonna feel like you're dying. And you're gonna feel like you're dying because you are. Like we are essentially pumping your body full of poison that can kill you because we are trying to kill the cancer, right? It's like we are essentially like you're gonna feel like you're dying because we're you're gonna be dying, but to essentially save your life. And I was like, I didn't really know what that meant, but at the time, fast forward a few weeks, I knew exactly like what he was talking about because really truly like I that was after starting chemo, that was the first time when I truly felt like scared for my life and scared about whether or not I was going to make it. After 5 chemo sessions, like genuinely, I remember telling my mom, like, this is like, I don't know what's killing me faster, like the cancer or the chemo. Like, but either way, like, I'm like, if I keep doing this, like, I'm going to die, right? At that point, I decided to get another opinion. This is when we went to MD Anderson. And we my oncologist there was Dr. Johnny, and he's like in like the gastric cancer world, he's like top dog. And he knows he's top dog. But so I was like, okay, I know I'm in good hands, right? We do liquid biopsy, we do genetic testing, we do all of these things. We do biomarker testing. These are things that I hadn't done before, or no one had really told me to do before. With the testing we did at MD Anderson, we were able to determine that there were specific biomarkers that I had that explained why chemo wasn't working for me and why I was a good candidate for immunotherapy. So I remember my doctor explaining, with my specific biomarkers, I am MSI high and PDL1 positive. And he's explaining to me basically what that means is your tumor cells have kind of mutated and masked, like the reason, yeah, he said the reason the chemo wasn't working is because chemo is meant to target cancer cells, right? My cancer cells have mutated themselves to look like normal, healthy cells, so they weren't being targeted. So the chemo was just targeting the good and the bad. So it was really just killing mostly good. But he's like, but the upside to this is that because of this specific biomarker, like you're a really good candidate for this immunotherapy drug. They happen to have a patient assistance program for Keytruda. I applied for it and they approved me for it. And they're telling me like, hey, like we're willing to like give you this treatment at no cost. And I was like, I don't know, it just like felt unreal. Um, but I was like, before somebody realized it, like, I was like, something's wrong here, but like before they realize it, let me just get in, let me get this treatment. um, yeah, so I start Keytruda in March of 2021 and didn't really know what to expect. My doctors are telling me like everybody responds to this very differently. Like this could be very similar to chemo, where you have similar side effects to chemo. You could experience hair loss, you could experience the nausea, the neuropathy, everything that you've kind of been dealing with, right? They're like, or there are a lot of people who are on immunotherapy and they experience very minimal side effects. Like they don't lose their hair, they're able to work, like they're very independent. Like we're just not going to know where you are until you start it. Thankfully, I ended up having a very good response to immunotherapy. I had my first set of scans after starting Keytruda about 3 months after starting, and those set of scans, I remember like my doctor telling me, he was like, "Hey, there's no sign of cancer. There's no evidence of disease. Like this is pretty remarkable that you had like such an insane response so quickly." But let's not forget like that your cancer was pretty aggressive. The likeliness of a reoccurrence is pretty high. And so I recommend that we continue treatment because you are responding well to it. You're experiencing minimal side effects. Let's just keep doing this. I was like, yes, sir, whatever you say. So we continued doing that. And I was on Keytruda for a little over 2 years. Started in March of 2021, had my last Keytruda infusion in May of 2023. And that was the point where but during that time, it's like I'm having my scans every 3 months, and thankfully, like they were all clear, and I was just extremely grateful. I felt like I was holding my breath the entire time. Um, I think something that I really struggled with during that time was like, at this point, like I've made a lot of friends within the cancer community, within the stomach cancer community. And everybody that I kind of started this journey with, I've seen them, we went through chemo together, we had surgery together, we went through all of our complications together. And these people they were at some point, they were cancer free. Their cancer came back and they're no longer here. And so for me, it was very hard for me not to like think that that wasn't going to be my outcome, right? And it always just felt like I was like waiting for the other shoe to drop because I'm like literally everyone I started this with is gone. So like how am I any different? What's like I didn't do anything different. I'm not more deserving of survival than anybody else. I don't want this more than anybody else. I don't, you know what I mean? Like there was nothing I did. Um, and there was definitely a lot of survivor's guilt that came with that. And I say that in past tense, but it's something that I still struggle with. And I think I've accepted that it's probably something that I am going to be living with. Um, and yeah, no, it's tough. Like I think in this phase of my life right now, like I'm, yeah, it's like navigating survivorship and figuring out like what that looks like, what that means to me. Um, and it's tough because I think that like once you are cancer free, a lot of people like this is amazing news. You're like, this is exactly what I wanted. This is what I was praying for. And it is. But a lot of people see that as kind of like that's the end of this. And now you can go back to normal, like back to regularly scheduled program. You can go back to being like normal Uroosa who's just like living her life, like traveling, like, hanging out with people, like, doing what you do best. Um, and for me, I'm kind of what do you mean? Yes, I don't have cancer, but also like, I'm also not the same person that I was. If I could give any advice to someone who was newly diagnosed and not just with like this specific cancer or just anybody like being presented with like a challenge that just seems like insurmountable, is that like, even if you don't see, even if you don't see like an ounce of hope, just like pretend like it's there, like fake it till you make it, because I I felt delusional for the like majority of this journey. I felt like a crazy person because I'm like, I'm fine. I felt like the dog, like the meme of the dog sitting in the kitchen with the fire, and he was like, this is fine. Like that's literally what I felt like. Um, but I feel like that like delusional hope was what like pushed me. Um, I would say one of the best pieces of advice that I received during treatment specifically was to always have something to look forward to.